Good morning. Looks like we have a little stall from our internet this morning, but welcome. I'm Mary Vinners. I'm a gerontologist and the owner of About Senior Solutions, and we provide something called geriatric care management, which is planning and supporting individuals who are aging. Oftentimes, we wind up meeting people where they're in a very severe crisis, and so we put this show together to provide resources and education for people to understand what they can do. Oh, let's see if we can get this video. What they can do in not an emergency. I like to plan, and so plan things out. That usually works a little bit better than running things through in an emergency. I think it's Mercury retrograde today too, so we're going to have all kinds of little funky things happen. I'm certain of it. In any event, we have a fantastic show because we have Christopher B. Johnson, who is an attorney, who's going to share a little bit about the similarities between Aretha Franklin and Howard Hughes, and the similarities and probably differences in their estate planning. So fascinating, and how some of these very bright minds and great celebrities and people who obviously with their name, how they put their plan together. We'll share that. We'll have Linda on. She will share a little tidbit on nutrition and fitness with us. And we're going to go right over to our caregiver question with Steve Magala. So let's go ahead with that. So we'll bring Steve in. I think he's coming. Maybe not. Buttons are really crazy today. Here we go. Steve. Can't unmute you. It's not letting me unmute you. This is very crazy. Let's see. So, hold on. We'll see what happens here. I don't know why I cannot unmute you there. Oh, great. Okay, we're back. Okay. All right, we're back. Let's see. So we'll go ahead and bring in Steve McCullough. And hey, Steve.
There you are.
I'm back. So yeah, it is fully Mercury retrograde. So we're
Nice.
clicking it, and I'm sure that's why our system goes
It's all
down.
good.
But
You're here now. I'm here
we're
now.
here. So, what kind of a question did we get today?
Had a very interesting question. The question comes from a lady. She wants to know what is a HIPAA release and why does she need it for her dad?
Well, if she doesn't have power of attorney or an advanced healthcare directive to make decisions, and that's probably something that she's more interested in having. We can talk with Chris Johnson later about that, but we really want to make sure that if you need information or you need to be able to understand something on behalf of your parent, but they maybe don't want to give you authority right now, it's a good option. It's also a really good option for college students too. Once you're 18 years old, the medical professionals do not need to talk to you. They're obligated to keep your medical information private. So I've had lots of friends whose kids take off to college and then they get sick and they're trying to help their child maneuver this medical system that they're not familiar with. And the doctors and whomever will not talk with them because they don't have a HIPAA release. It's a really simple form. You probably find it on the internet, but feel free to call our office too, 626 359-0108. You can ask Jenny to forward a form to you. And that way, in an emergency, if you needed to talk to healthcare professionals for a loved one, you have something. Sometimes family members also will go ahead and kind of give a blanket HIPAA release. The family will give a blanket HIPAA release, so at least family maybe who don't speak with one another can interact or talk with physicians and medical professionals. But the Advanced Healthcare Directive is the best way to really support an individual. But if they're not ready to surrender that, it's a good option. But we'll ask Chris. We'll ask Chris and see what he has to say too.
Sounds
So
good.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Melinda's on with us, but let me go ahead and we'll bring Chris in. And how about we bring you back at the end? Is that
All
good?
right. Sounds good. Have a great show.
All right. Thanks. And we'll bring Christopher Johnson in. Chris is a estate planning attorney, also does litigation. So he understands when some of these things go a little bit wacky, some of these estate plans go wacky and they wind up in court, right, Chris?
Yeah, exactly. Not what we want, but yes, sometimes it's inevitable.
Yeah. So tell me, we were talking a little bit about who we were going to talk about or what we were going to talk about, and you really set yourself up as really an expert. You've done a lot of lecturing on some of the foibles of the estate planning documents with celebrities, which is always so fascinating thinking that someone like that should really have it tuned in. And some really have. And I think from your research, Aretha Franklin and Howard Hughes really did a pretty good job with their estate planning.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's interesting because people thought they had wills and they talked about having them, and in the end, you couldn't find wills for either of them.
Oh, really?
One person that another one I did that had talked about, and one reason we don't know a whole lot about his estate was Hugh Hefner, who also ended up doing a trust. And I think there was some leaked information that looked like it gave about half to his kids and half to charity. And we know what Playboy Enterprises sold for, 35 million after his death, even though it was worth about 200 million in the 70s. But
Really?
his chunk sold for that later. But the rest of the assets, we may never know what he had and what he did with some of the money he got from selling a piece of it while he was alive. And all that's due to his planning with a trust, which is something that we always advise our clients to do. But 30% of us have done some kind of estate plan, and the rest of us have not. And so that's where someone like Aretha Franklin and Howard Hughes both had some interesting fights over their estates because in the end, they couldn't find anything. Now, in Howard Hughes, apparently, and I don't know if you'd seen the movie. I remember watching it as a kid about Melvin and Howard, about the gas station attendant who had claimed that he had a will
Sure.
written by Howard Hughes, leaving him, I believe it was 1/16 of the estate. And they fought over that. Howard Hughes died in 76. I think it was sometime around a couple years later that the court decided the will wasn't real. And
Oh,
so
really? Interesting.
he got kicked out, but I guess he must have sold some rights to the movie and probably came out better than the gas station pay.
Yeah, probably.
And then there was another that something I didn't realize, but she'd written a book too, was someone who said they were married in the 1940s. She was an actress, and they did indeed live together for a while, but that they were married in some offshore ceremony, and then said, oh, we're actually married twice, but could never come up with any proof. And the way I read it, the lawyers just gave her $400,000 to go away finally because she was such a pest. So,
Oh my gosh, interesting. Kind of like a Yoko Ono.
yeah, yeah. I guess
Not that she
just
got money to go away, she just wouldn't go away. So she just
yeah. There's something to be said for persistence.
yes.
For sure. And one of the lessons we learn in litigation is that sometimes it's the really awful and reasonable people who make out a lot better than they should because they just do not give up.
Right.
And
Right.
they are not reasonable, and they do not abide by the rest of the laws or politeness or decorum that makes the world go around. And that means sometimes, like in her case, they'll get some money for that.
Yeah.
And go on leading their miserable lives. And then and apparently she wrote a book as well. I don't think that got turned into a movie, but she made some money off of her experience. And in the end, I guess he'd had a medical foundation that he had donated a lot of money to, and everyone thought that's where the estate was going because he'd said he didn't want it to go to distant relatives. But in the end, that's what happened. Something like over 200 relatives, something like that ended up getting the estate that was somewhere at the time, I think, over $1 billion.
Wow.
So yeah, that I think the most I've had is a case with a bit more modest. It was a home in Montebello, but this guy had also not done a will, and I think it went to about 50 different people. And
wow.
That was, and in the end, it was a little sad because most of them had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
the people he was close to,
I made a distribution as a trustee. That's not something I would normally do. It was just on a personal level, and the individual wanted his cousin, who he really didn't know. He wasn't even quite sure what his first name was, but thought he knew where he lived. Those were the clues that I had to work with. And it was interesting getting a hold of him. Of course, the man initially was thinking, he hung up. Who are you? What do you mean you're giving me money? But this gentleman who wanted to leave the money to him said, I inherited the home from my mom, and I just want somebody, this is according to the drafting attorney, I just want somebody from my family to get a little bit of the house. And I thought that was really lovely. I wanted to make sure his wishes were followed through.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. But yeah, in cases like that, that was kind of the same with those 50 heirs. The people thought it was a scam. And so yeah, I just had to assure them, well, you'll get a check and try cashing it, and then let us know.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is sad when you don't plan, I remember a situation with a little man who worked at a hospital, and his property, I think he got the job at the hospital because he bought the property or lived just right adjacent behind the hospital, and probably just went over and said, "Hey, I'm handy. I could be your handy guy." And he was for probably 30, 40 years, and he willed his property to this hospital, a nonprofit hospital. But I think there was a man there that kind of he treated like a son. He never had any children. He and his wife never had any children. He treated him like a son, and I think that he would have liked to have left that to this gentleman that he worked with for so long. And same thing when he passed away, everything was distributed to family members out of the country who did not know him. Yeah, it was kind of sad to see that there wasn't a little something that went to somebody who was really truly important to him, and that's what planning really supports, is really making sure
Yeah,
that people you care about are remembered.
yeah, and I think people don't understand that can't happen without planning, or they think that maybe a close friend can step up and be in charge and then just kind of decide who gets what in a lot of cases. And that may happen informally with things in the house, but for anything else, that is going to see probate and then just get distributed according to what the law says. And in California, and I would imagine most other states are almost exactly the same. It just finds the first group of relatives who are the nearest related by blood and goes that way. And so, like we see, if that means someone who's kind of forged out on their own and does not have a spouse and no kids, that could wind up being some very distant people.
Yeah, interesting. Well, how about I'm going to have you come back in just a minute. I'm going to bring Melinda on to share some information with us. But how about if we talk a little bit more about Aretha Franklin's estate in just a
Sounds
few
good.
minutes? So that's good. Okay, great. Sounds good then. Here we go. We're going to bring on Melinda. How are you this morning? I have you muted still. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Good morning. Can you
Good
hear me
morning.
okay?
I hear you great. Looks like you're in the
Okay.
studio.
Yeah, I'm calling in from the strength shop this morning.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So,
I've
yeah.
got a tip for everyone this morning.
Great.
It's very important for our nutrition to eat a wide variety of foods. And sometimes we get locked into our habits or our favorite foods, or we kind of get into a routine of what we're making or what we're eating. And so my tip for today is to encourage everybody to try something new, start to put a little bit more variety in their food, because that's how we get, that we get the full nutritional value of a wide variety of food. We have to make sure that we're including a wide variety of food in our meals.
Sure.
And you don't have to do anything too crazy. You can just start small by, if you have the same vegetable or the same few vegetables every time you eat, you just switch in some new vegetables, switch in some variety there. And it'll really pay off. It's really important to get a wide variety. And when we get stuck into eating the same foods, that's when we can develop nutrient imbalances or deficiencies. So really trying to incorporate different foods we don't normally eat. That's my tip for today.
That's a great tip. I noticed even when I did some food testing that the things that I eat most often, like black tea in the morning or certain foods, it showed up as kind of an issue, actually, not an allergy, but it was becoming a sensitivity. So
yes.
I do change it up, and but you do get in those ruts, so it's good to kind of stop and think and change it up.
Yeah, every food that we eat, our body has a reaction to, and it causes a little bit of inflammation in the body. So if we're eating the same foods every day over and over again, our body starts to develop kind of like a chronic reaction to them. And that's where we get those food sensitivities. They're not usually, I mean, they're not, if you do an allergy test, like at the doctor's office, it's not going to come up an allergy. But if you do a food sensitivity test, we have one that we offer in the strength shop, the KBMO testing. It will come up if you're eating it with a lot of frequency, and your body will start to have reactions to that food that are real physical reactions, stomach aches, skin issues, eczema, that kind of thing. So definitely important to add variety, not just for the nutritional value, but also to, protect against chronic inflammation that eating the same food over and over again can lead to.
Ah, interesting. Well, thank you so much for those tips. We appreciate it. Have a great one, and I hope your person has a great workout with you.
Yes, it's going to be good. Okay, have a great show.
Thank you. That was great. And she's down to business, but we're going to talk about somebody's 100th birthday. So let me bring them on too. Birthday here for a lovely lady. I can't even believe that she's 100 years old. I mean, truly. She is from New York, and her name is Evelyn Poole. I'm sorry, she's from Virginia. And her father worked as an iceman, and her mom is a homemaker. She's from the Margaret of Scotland Catholic Church in Capitol Heights in Maryland, was where they had this beautiful party for her. And many people came to celebrate her. She says we do little exercises. She does all kinds of things with her retirement group. They do little exercises. They go on trips. And sounds like she's extremely social. And I hope you have a fantastic birthday, Miss Poole. And I want to look like you when I grow up, because if that's 100, you look amazing. So let me go ahead, and I think we're going to we'll bring Chris Johnson back and talk with him a little bit about our estate planning with Miss Aretha Franklin. Let me see if I can find Chris and bring him back and talk a little bit about that. Hey, Chris.
Oh, hi.
So share a little bit more about Aretha Franklin and some of her estate planning that she did.
Oh, sure. So, and she's one who had several lawyers with her over her career. And so again, people thought, well, she's going to have something. But in the end, what they found was some handwritten documents that were submitted to the court by the probate attorney for their review. And I couldn't find out exactly what they decided. Is it appeared some of the wills might have favored some children over others, but in the end, what did happen is that her 4 children shared the estate equally. And so that, which was probably a good result. Maybe you've seen, and I know I've seen, if things are unequal, it's usually not for the best unless those kids agree on it. Which is a rare case. And so I personally, in almost all cases, I like seeing people get an equal distribution. And, in the end, that seems to work out well, and means they're probably still going to talk with each other over the rest of their lives, rather than having that divide them.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know I was at a table with somebody the other day, and they said, I don't think my kids or my parents, my siblings are not going to like the fact that my parents made me the trustee of the estate. And I love my siblings, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And I thought, well, I don't know, maybe have a conversation before they die. And it doesn't mean that you're getting anything more. It just means because maybe you're the attorney in the family, your parents decided to have you, even though you're the youngest child, to be the trustee. So how do people decide that too?
That is a good suggestion. I tell people they don't have to talk about everything that's in the will or the trust, but yeah, just kind of explaining what's going to happen might be good, and their thinking behind it, because yeah, someone does have to be in charge, and I think a lot of times people really don't understand what's involved, but it is a bit of tedious work and a lot of record keeping and gathering assets. And see, it takes a certain kind of personality to do that, and some are
Mhm.
better than others, and
Sure.
not not everyone appreciates it. But also, what they can appreciate is maybe the thing gets wrapped up sooner, and they get their check sooner. Which, in the end, despite what people say, that's that's usually what they want. And usually, the call I get after kind of dancing around the issue is, when am I going to get paid and how much? And so someone who is organized and has the time to devote to it, it's not a full-time job certainly, but it's going to take some time. And you've served as a trustee, it may take up a lot more time than you expect it will when
It does.
issues come up.
It does.
And so I think if parents could explain that, that may be helpful. I know for whatever reason, a lot of people confuse trustee or executor with beneficiary. And a lot of times they think if someone's in charge, that person's
Sure.
getting everything.
Sure.
Or even if they don't understand that their role is just to preserve everything, to then distribute to all the beneficiaries. And even understanding that, I think, could go a long way, and understand that their job is to treat everybody fairly and maximize the value of the estate for everybody. Then that might help them understand a bit better. And so that kind of conversation might be good, because sometimes I'd recommend having more than one, or maybe if there's just two kids and they're the beneficiaries, well, maybe they do it together if they get along. But if there's four, logistically, that even if they all get along, that
It's
one's
hard.
painful.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
hard.
it's hard to do. And if they understood that, well, if it was just one of us, it's still okay. And we can still help out. And probably the biggest thing is I tell people is communicate with each other, because as long as they, um, everyone kind of understands what's going on, they're not going to be thinking about what sort of nefarious activities that person's doing and running off to Mexico with the money in their head. I've only seen one case where that actually happened,
Oh, really?
but
So,
most of the time everything gets divided and done.
so if Howard or Aretha came into your office, and I just put your email up there, it's www.christopherbjohnson.com. If they were to reach out to you, what are the 4 basic documents that you put together in an estate plan?
Well, at the very least, everybody needs a will, and that can just say where things go and who's going to be in charge. And then a couple of important ones are powers of attorney. So that's having a healthcare power of attorney, and then with that, HIPAA authorization that you were talking about earlier, just to make sure that works, a financial power of attorney, and then if you've got real estate in California, or now the magic number is assets over 184,500 in California, a trust is probably going to work a lot better than a will, and keep things out of probate court and keep the cost down. And so those are the 4 basics, that everybody should have. And then from there, if you've got more to worry about or estate taxes to worry about, we can look at all kinds of other things to do. But for most people, that's you should at least have uh, those 4, or if you're maybe fortunate enough to not have to worry about probate, at least the will.
Okay, good. Good to know. And I'm sorry that I thought they really planned.
Oh, yeah,
And I think I
you
said
would
Hugh
think.
Hefner instead of Howard Hughes, one of those Hugh names. But
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Hugh Hefner actually did plan really well, right?
He did, and he was fairly private about it. And in the end, yeah, he did what we would recommend everyone to do. It's maybe not the person I would have thought who would have done it, but
Exactly. Interesting. How about we're going to bring Stephen McCullough back with us, and we'll talk a little bit about what day it is today. How's that? I will bring up. Hey,
Good
Steve.
morning.
How are
Hey,
you? So, do you have your estate plan done?
Chris, I'm going to call you afterwards, Chris. Open a file.
Super important.
That's right. We make it very simple.
Well, going through this with my parents the last couple of months, I can just reiterate just the importance of having those documents and knowing where those documents are. My parents had a will and a trust. My mom knew where it was, but my mom was the one who was in the hospital. My dad had no idea where it was. So tracking that down took more legwork than it should have. So having those documents, knowing where those documents are both extremely important.
That's true. Making it available to your decision makers is very important. At least letting them know that it's in a certain spot or who drafted them, or it's in a safe or something. Even if you don't want them to look at it in advance, it's important to still know. And the worst is when you don't even know you're the decision maker. That happens to people a lot too.
It's better to discuss that ahead of time, but not everybody does.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean that's when you see your parents, every couple of weeks or once a month, maybe depending on logistics. It's not the conversation you necessarily want to have, but it's very important.
It's true. Well, let's see what day it is today. It is International Day of Sign Language. Kind of interesting. And then let's see, is there a good pun? I saw a sign on shop door that said "Guide Dogs Welcome." I walked in, then was greeted by a Labrador who thanked me for shopping with my coat. All right, I don't know if that one's that great, but let's see, what's tomorrow? Do you have any other days that it is today, Steve? Or
well, I have a this day in sports history.
Oh, well, let's hear it.
So in 1983, Philadelphia Phillies pitcher Steve Carlton became the 16th player at that time to win his 300th game.
Wow.
And for those historians that are watching, back in the day, if you were a starting pitcher and you had hopes of getting into the Hall of Fame, 300 wins was like the limit. You had to at least have 300 wins to be considered into the Hall of Fame. Not that was, cut and dry. There were other people who didn't have 300 wins but still had a great career. But that was basically the standard. Now, of course, you're not. I don't know if we're going to see another 300 win pitcher. Chris, I don't know if you're a big baseball fan, but you don't have that longevity. You don't have, you'd have to win 300 to get 300 wins. You'd have to win at least 20 games for 15 years. And a lot of pitchers are not winning 20 games anymore. They're not pitching that much. And so anyways, that was a big standard. I remember that day. I remember thinking, okay, it's, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And
wow. Fantastic. Well, fantastic. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for viewing. And if you have any questions, reach out to Christopher Johnson at ChristopherBJohnson.com and send those questions in, because we will answer them and Steve will present them. So everybody, I hope you have a fantastic weekend.